Although we were only 2 degrees last night.
Mm.
But Stuart, are we ready to begin, do you think? Is it 9 o'clock or should we, or 9 o'clock UK, should we give it a bit longer?
I would have thought a few more minutes, but I think most people are here. Well, I think that's probably about enough, Andy, don't you? So, would you like to start off, Andy, and give us a few words welcome from the chief?
Yes, I'm delighted.
Oh, excuse me, before we go on, maybe we ought to say to everybody, can you mute yourself normally? Because sometimes there are background noises that get very irritating when people are speaking. So can everybody irritate them except for Andrew Marjoribanks and mute themselves?
I'll do that. Right. Well, I'm very happy to welcome everybody here. I have to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we've got people from all over the world here. I'm delighted to see you all here, and I'm very pleased that we can all join together through Zoom, because of course it's a bit difficult for us all to get together in real life. We're scattered about Europe and North America. I was looking at the minutes of our last general meeting, Caroline's beautifully prepared minutes, and she refers to the chief's welcome. And in fact, my welcome today is very similar. It's just to say I'm very pleased to see you all here. And I'm very pleased that the meeting's taking place. And I know very well that it wouldn't happen without a lot of work by various people in the background. And I always appreciate very much the efforts of everybody involved in the Marjoribanks, the Clan Marjoribanks Society, who make things actually happen, including this meeting. So I will just say, I'm sure we've got quite a lot to cover today. So very welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Stuart then to moderate the meeting. I shall now mute myself.
Thank you. For those of you who are new, obviously Andrew Marjoribanks is the chief of the Clan Marjoribanks. Patricia, my wife, Patricia Bailey-Strong, is the president. Caroline Morris, who's in the box called Greenville Group, is the secretary of the clan, waving her hand. John, up in John Marjoribanks, he is our clan genealogist and the UK treasurer. And Kimberly, who is also part of the Greenville group there, I think. She's the US treasurer. Kate Marjoribanks down there at the bottom is the newsletter, no, not the newsletter, the social media secretary. My son Jonathan Bailey-Strong is the webmaster. And I think that's about it. Unless I've forgotten somebody. Carol Leake, I don't see her there, and Linda Flo. So we'll just leave them there. Can I ask you each to introduce yourselves? And perhaps if Caroline can take down your names, if I can just go through them in my list. Chris Latham, you want to say something?
Yes, well, I'm so pleased to be a part of this experience. Weather here is very nice. It's I would say about 60 degrees, 65 maybe this afternoon. This is afternoon, of course, after 4 o'clock. But I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be a part of this.
Okay. Laurie, do you want to say something?
Well, I'm new. Laurie Shirey, Francis Marion Marjoribanks.
Okay, thank you. DMAC?
Yes.
Hiya.
Okay, that's me, Donald Mack. I live in 96 South Carolina, and my great-great-grandfather was Samuel Banks, and I'm new to the organization and have been doing some genealogy study over the past few years and decided to join the society. So got in the mood today for this we had our Kirkin of the Tartan service at a First Presbyterian Church in Greenwood, South Carolina today. It was very, had pipes and drums, and it was a wonderful service. And also, I just finished watching an episode of Alan and Miriam in Lost in Scotland. So
Thank
great
you.
to be here.
Adrienne?
Adrienne Hills, and I'm Marjoribanks through my grandmother. So I'm a first cousin of Carol Leake. I live in Erie, Pennsylvania now, and I've been working on the Zoom meetings, and I'm delighted to be able to have this opportunity because often the Marjoribanks U.S. reunions would hit at a time where I was not able to travel to Greenville. So I appreciate being able to make this connection.
Great. Alex Marjoribanks?
Hi, it's Alex here, John and Andrew's son. Just speaking to you from Fife, up in Scotland, and yeah, looking forward to listening in.
Excellent. Glad you could be with us. Charlotte Beattie?
Hello, Charlotte and Ian Petey, sister to Rachel and Alex and daughter to John and Andrew Marjoribanks, and we are in Gosport near Portsmouth in England.
Excellent, thank you. Jonathan, want to say hello?
Hello. Yeah, Jonathan here, Patricia and Stuart's son, tuning in from New York today.
Thanks. Kevin?
Hello, I'm in Morganton, North Carolina, just joining in for the first time.
Excellent, glad you could join us. Lee, Lewis, Rachel, Robin Duffy?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm Robin Duffy, and I'm related through my grandfather, Charles Whitaker, and my mother, Judy Whitaker Dietz, and I'm also one of Caroline's cousins. And this is my first Zoom meeting, but I do believe I was at the Scottish Games at Fermont last year, and I met y'all. So that you were there and enjoyed it very much. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone. So thank you.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us. And Robin Marjoribanks?
Hi, I'm Robin from Toronto. I'm the son of Robert and Nancy Marjoribanks, who were involved for years, and a cousin of Fiona Marjoribanks.
Excellent. I think that's everybody. Have I missed out anybody?
Hello. Hello from New Zealand.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
John
Marjoribanks.
Thank you. I'm John Marjoribanks from New Zealand, city in Tauranga, New Zealand. I am related to the Marjoribanks in Hainaut in England. I haven't been across there to see them, but we wish to do that in our bucket list. I have 3 sons. One, in fact, lives in Frostburg, Maryland, and he's very interested in sort of carrying on the tradition of tracing the family. So I'll obviously gather there's a few Americans on the Zoom at the present time, so I'll be sending this on to him fairly soon. But thank you for the opportunity. As I say, it's 9 o'clock on a Monday morning here, so I should be busy, but and I may need to leave in short notice. But thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for joining us. Okay. I think the next item on the agenda is apologies. Those that I can remember are Bill Jackson, Irene Marjoribanks, and Ronald Hart. Are there any more, Caroline, that you know?
That I have noted, no.
Oh, okay. Right, let's move on. Minutes of the last general meeting. There are summary minutes of the last AGM in 2022 on the Marjoribanks website. They've been there for almost a year now. Caroline has made more detailed minutes, so if anybody would like a copy, please contact her or me, and we'll forward a copy. But otherwise, the summary minutes are on the website. Right, let's move on quickly to President's Report. Can I ask you, Patricia, to report as a president?
Okay, it's good to see so many of you. It's wonderful that we can all get together like this. This is our second worldwide clan meeting by Zoom. We suggested having a worldwide meeting, which brings in particular the US and the UK parts of our clan together, but also the members of the family from Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. It's been a privilege for me to be president of the society for the last 14 years, but I feel it's now come the time for me to give over to someone younger to take over the presidency. I'm therefore resigning as president, and I formed a nominating committee about 2 months ago, and would like to nominate Rachel Marjoribanks for the post of president and Lee Plumley for the office of vice president. It's been vacant for a while, but I think it's wonderful if, well, Lee would like to take it on. Our Secretary, Caroline Morris, will describe a new post in the US, which is being created of a US membership secretary, and the proposed candidate is Robin Duffy. I'm sure that the Clan Society will go from strength to strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Can I ask Caroline to give the Secretary's report and the US Clan Marjoribanks Society report, please?
Certainly. First of all, I would like to wish our chief happy birthday. We celebrated your birthday this time last year, and we would like to wish you a happy birthday again this year. And also, I would like to introduce Robin Duffy, who has consented to serve as a membership chair. She is a descendant of Stephen Perry Marjoribanks through Suni Tate Marjoribanks, her father Charles Whitaker, her mother Judy Whitaker Dietz. And Robin really doesn't like for us to say a whole lot about her, but she's very well qualified. She is currently serving as the membership chair of the Greenville Women's Republican Party, and she's also the president-elect of the Greenville Women's Republican Party. Robin, did I get all of that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And especially I want to thank Patricia for her service as president. She's just been wonderful. She and Stuart both have stepped up to the plate and filled in a huge gap for us, and we look forward to having Rachel come on board in the future. As to the Greenville activities, we had a wonderful dinner at the Poinsett Club on August the 11th. J. Jennings Gresham was host. We had 27 people there, and we had some interesting programs. Most of that was presented thanks to Jonathan on YouTube, but there was a portion that we could not present due to the protocol of the club that presented the military honors. We bestowed 2 military crosses, one to Ron Culpepper, and the other to his father posthumously. Carol Leak was in charge of the program. Pamela Evans participated. I participated. And the remainder of the program after this portion was documented by Jonathan. Kimberly Bruce gave a treasurer's report and a report on the continuing Tartan project, and Lee Plumley has acted as master of ceremonies. Father Latham offered the blessing of the dinner. After the meeting, I began a search for a membership chairman, and thankfully Robin Duffy has agreed to accept the position. And I'd also like to note that a parade chairman may be forthcoming if we can find someone to head up our parade before the games in May. That would be wonderful. If any of you all have any suggestions as to a parade chairman, I would really appreciate that, and we would approach the person to organize our group to march in the parade. As for this meeting, I sent out quite a few notices. I sent out 71 that were on Bill Jackson, the major list, and then 123 that were on our list here in Greenville of names that we have of members and prospective members. They were all notified by email of this meeting. The next event that we have coming up, of course, will be the parade, the Scottish Games parade in May. And then after that, we hope to have another dinner. And at that time, in addition to a program, we plan to bestow 2 additional military crosses, one to Bill Jackson and another one to Steve Gresham posthumously. He's J. Jennings' father. If anyone has any suggestions, we would love to have suggestions for our next gathering and for this meeting too. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Incidentally, I hadn't noticed, it's quite difficult to see in your thing, but Carol Leak is also there in your Greenville group.
Yes,
Carol is the U.S. archivist, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so good to see you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the UK financial report from John Marjoribanks.
It's nice and short. We had an opening balance of £801.71 at the meeting last year. We've received subscriptions of £104. We haven't spent anything, So we've got a balance of £905.71 in the kitty as we enter the next year. But a little bit of background explanation. The reason we haven't spent anything is that the main activity on this side of the pond has been the regular and very successful production of the newsletter, and that's all been done by Stuart, aided by Patricia and Jonathan, with absolutely no charge to the Society. And I just would like to record the thanks of the Society for the huge amount of time, effort, input, absolutely gratis, that has come from the editor of our newsletter and journal. Thank you very much, Stuart, for all that you've done. The other thing I'd like to comment on the accounts is that we've been a bit remiss in on this side of the Atlantic in pushing people to pay their subscriptions, to the extent that over the last 3 years, there have only been subscriptions retrieved from 3 people. But there have been an awful lot more than that have been receiving the newsletter. So as from now, I will get more diligent, and I want to collaborate with Robin Duffy. We don't have a membership secretary over here, so the treasurer is really responsible for that. I'd like to collaborate with Robin to use the marvelous email list, because I can't see, looking at it briefly, who's in what country, and maybe Robin can help me to get that sorted out so I know who we should be chasing up on this side of the pond. And the other thing that's incumbent on the Society, and our American cousins are very good at this, is making sure there are plenty of activities during the year so that people really feel it's worthwhile being a member. We had one meeting in April last year on Zoom, which was shared worldwide, and that was a talk. And I hope we have the same intention to have a similar meeting halfway through this coming year on a subject not dealing with all this official stuff, but just on matters of interest to the Society. And maybe we can get some ideas on what could go into that. So that's me, the financial report. We're in good financial health. We've got 900 quid in the bank, and we now need to make sure we utilize that properly in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Item 8 is the US financial report. Kimberly, could I ask you to comment on that?
Most certainly. So I sent out the financial report for the United States, and it started in January because I had to open a bank account once I received the treasurer's position, and so I was looking back at the paper checking account that we had from October of last year, and the numbers do match up. So the $3,963.68 matches with last October. And basically what our dues, so we have $430 that we received in dues, and usually that balances out the to pay for this the Scottish Games tent. And then we also had a family gathering, and the reimbursements for the family gathering balances out as well, to where we this year we have gained $36.83, and so that gives our closing balance of $4,000. And one thing that I would like to do is to give back to our community. And one place that I really like to focus on is Reedy River Baptist Church, because we have a lot of ancestors buried there. And so that's something that I am looking to try to do at some time in the future. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. The next item is genealogy report. So, John, can I ask you to give that?
Thank you, Stuart. Before I do that, may I just say that I forgot to say something at the end of the financial report, and that is that I've had the same, or the society has had the same bank account for years, and now I think it's prudent that we move on to online banking because nobody uses checkbooks anymore, and I need a formal resolution to be put in the minutes authorizing me to open a digital bank account with the same bank that we've always been with. I wonder if, Caroline, if I send you the wording that the bank are asking for, you could incorporate it in the minutes of this meeting, and then I can get online without having any problems.
I'll be glad to.
Thank you very much. On the genealogy side, I have done one or two things during the year. One of the things, somebody asked if I could try and trace where George the Jacobite had actually come from. That was quite interesting, but it didn't lead to a definite conclusion. He definitely was working probably on a farm in the Scottish borders when the Jacobite army moved through, and like many young men probably decided this looked fun, joined in, and unfortunately not much further south at Preston, got rounded up and transported to America, to the advantage of our American cousins and the loss of Scotland. But it's not yet clear. I've looked at Roger Marjoribanks's records, and he also had the same problem as me. It's very difficult to identify exactly the relationship between George and the other branches of the family. We'll find it one day, and maybe DNA is going to help. But what I was asked to do by my brother, the chief, at this meeting was to run through quickly the question of succession to the chiefship of the clan Marjoribanks, so that everyone in the society and the clan is aware of the situation. So if you forgive me, I've prepared a report. I'll just run quickly through it. William Marjoribanks, the father of Andy and myself, was recognized as chief of the name of and arms of Marjoribanks when his arms were matriculated in the public register of all arms and bearings in Scotland on the 15th of February 1965. You can actually see on the wall behind me, just up there, his matriculation of arms, which I've got. They belong to my brother now, of course, but I've got a photocopy of them up there. It took William, my father, a great deal of time, effort, and expense to show to the satisfaction of the Lord Lion that he was the eldest surviving son of the eldest surviving son, right back to the chief who registered arms in 1673. So proving that the continued use of arms right through from the 8th chief to what was my dad, the 18th chief, it was quite a difficult job and it took a lot of time and effort. So when William died on the 1st of December 1991, the right to bear the undifferenced arms of the chief was inherited by his elder son, my brother Andy. And like most of his ancestors, he hasn't actually matriculated arms, but has followed the practice of his ancestors and relied on what they call possession on apparency. Now, it's quite common for families not to re-register their arms for 2 or 3 generations, but the Lion Office recommends it's done no less frequently than that, or else living memory has departed and it becomes very difficult to prove the connections again. I've been reading up on the succession of arms in 2 different sources. The main one is Sir Thomas Innes of Lerney, his book Scots Heraldry, which is in the bookcase up here, and the other one is The Law of Succession to Arms by Sir Ian Moncrieff of that ilk, which is also in my bookcase up there. In addition, I've been in correspondence with the Lion Clerk and Keeper of the Record at the Lord Lion's office to make sure that what I say is correct. The key thing about arms in Scotland is the right to bear arms is legally vested in one owner and can only be inherited by a single heir. The bearer of the arms, known as the armiger, must carry the name associated with those arms in order to establish the right to bear them. The head of a family or chief of a clan is the person who has the right to bear the undifferenced arms. If you look at the wall behind me, you probably can't make it out, but the one that on the right, as you can look at it, is a matriculation of my arms, which are different from my brother's because I'm a younger brother. So, but I'm not allowed to bear the same arms as he has. I have to have a difference. So the chief is the only person in that has the right to bear arms. Anyone else in the clan who wants to register arms can do so, but non-armigerous, as those who don't have arms, can use the strap and buckle badge. I'm sure you're all familiar with the strap and buckle badge that we use for anything to do with the clan. There are three types of heir who may have the right to inherit arms: the heir of line, the heir male, and the heir of taili. Taking the last one first, the heir of taili is the heir to heritable property, and sometimes that property comes with an entail, or in Scots, a taili, that specifies that the person who inherits the property must have the name and bear the arms of the person from whom they are inheriting the property. It doesn't apply in our case because the barony of Marjoribanks was sold in 1828 by Alexander Marjoribanks of Balbardy, and he also sold the barony of the estate of Balbardy and the barony of Bathgate. They were sold by his trustees after his death in 1861, largely because he and his son Alexander had gone through vast sums of money, and the estate had to be sold at public auction to defray their debts. So from our point of view, it relieves us from any sort of inherited mansion or estate that might complicate things. So we can forget about the heir of taili. The second category of heir, the heir male, is the person who is the senior male direct or collateral descendant of the armiger. In the case of our family, I am currently the heir male, and my son Alexander would be the next heir male. The law of inheritance is very clear that the heir of line has precedence over the heir male. In other words, Andy's children, who happen to be all female, have precedence over me or any of my children because they are heirs of line of the current chief. So the eldest child of the chief is whether she's male or female, and in our case she's female, and there she is, Katie. She is the heir of line of the armiger, and hence in normal circumstances would be, in any circumstances, should be the next person to inherit the arms. There is one very powerful condition that the Lord Land makes, is that the person who matriculates arms must have the surname associated with the arms. Katie, as most of you know, is married to Glenn Lashley, and her married name is Katie Lashley, although she still uses Katie Marjoribanks professionally. I'm advised by the Lion Clerk that for a married woman, she doesn't need to go through any legal process. All she needs to do is reassume her maiden name when she matriculates arms. The way the Line Office works is that within a year and 1 day of the death of an armiger, the heir of line has to matriculate arms, adopting the name from whom from whom she's inheriting. Or if she doesn't do so within a year and a day, her right to those arms is lost. So it's important for Katie that she should matriculate with the Lion Office the undifferenced arms of Marjoribanks of that ilk within a year and a day of the death of my brother. If she didn't, or if she didn't take up the arms or decided not to, she can issue a letter of renunciation, or she simply does nothing, in which case, after a year and a day, the right passes to her next sister, Faith Sinclair. Her married name is Sinclair, but again, if she were to use the name of Marjoribanks and matriculate arms within a year and a day of Katie's renunciation, so we're now up to 2 years and 2 days from Andy's death, she would become the next chief, and so on. So her younger sister, Kirsty, would become the next chief. So if nobody did anything among Andy's daughters, 3 years and 3 days after his death, my son Alexander could petition the Lord Lion for the grant of arms. What any family doesn't want is any sort of argument about this sort of thing. So the important thing is that it is all, everyone knows in advance what's going to happen. Although the chiefship of Marjoribanks has passed through the male line through, I think, 16 generations over 538 years since Philip Marjoribanks, who signed a charter in 1485, signing himself Philip of Marjoribanks of that ilk in Latin. Many Scottish families, the chiefship has passed through the female line. For example, the Leslies, the Scotts, the Napiers, the Hayes, the Farquharsons, the Rattrays, the MacLeods of MacLeod, the Monroes, the lots of families, it's gone through the female line. And interestingly enough, the chief of the Gordons, the Marquis of Huntly, is actually the heir male of the chief of the Setons. And the chief of the Setons is the heir male of somebody else. So it often does go through the female line. I as some of you will know, have spent a lot of time over the last 20 years researching on behalf of the Clan Logan Society, which is most of its members are in America, to see if we can identify who is the rightful chief of Clan Logan. In 1802, the last acknowledged chief, Hugh Logan of Logan, died in debt with 3 illegitimate children, but never married, and his estate, what was left of it, was left to his sister, Mrs. Campbell. She never readopted the name Logan, so the arms were lost by her. There was a second cousin who could have taken up the arms, but when he didn't get the estate, he didn't bother with the arms. And now it has proved absolutely impossible so far, after 20 years working on it, to find who is the rightful chief of Clan Logan. Now, the Logans are a proud clan, but they're very frustrated at not having the status of being a clan with a chief. So the point that I'm making here is it's very important for us in the Marjoribanks family that we don't let that happen to us, that we don't let the thing drop, because I know how much trouble my dad had in proving it all over again after 300 years of a gap. So I think the key thing for my brother Andrew and his children is to decide exactly how they want to handle it, and that we all agree, and that there's no recriminations and everything's smoothly pursued. From the clan's point of view, it doesn't really matter, well, it does matter, but it's less important who is the chief than that we have a chief and that the chiefship will continue into the future. So that was my report on the genealogical side of the inheritance of the clan chiefship.
Okay, thank you very much, John. That's extremely interesting. You've gone to a lot of trouble to work on that. I had down on the agenda for item number 10, Marchbanks female lines. And the reason is, in general, we've tended to concentrate on the Marchbanks male lines, both sides of the Atlantic. Carol Leake, however, made an excellent presentation in Greenville a few months ago, looking at the female lines of the US Marchbankses using DNA. So I said to myself, wouldn't it be interesting to look at some Scottish female ancestors, in particular the Chief's line? Initially, John and I were going to talk about some of the famous or interesting ancestors on the female line, but we decided that would be way too long. So I'll only discuss DNA relatives that I got using Patricia's DNA. Patricia, as you know, is the first cousin of the chief. So she has the same grandparents. So if you hold on a second, I'll see if I can bring up a few. Where is it? No. Take me a minute or two. Bring up some slides. Right. Let me go back again. Share screen. Right. Can you see that? Female ancestors of Andrew Marchbanks.
We can see it.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Right. So, Andrew Marchbanks is on the left, down at the bottom, and his wife, Fiona. And so Andrew's father, William Logan Marchbanks, is the next step up. And then the Reverend Thomas Marchbanks. Now, Fiona also has Marchbanks ancestry. You can see her grandfather was John Marchbanks. So I'd love to see some DNA from Fiona or Robin Marchbanks, her cousin, to see more about that line. However, I wouldn't. Those are not actually ancestors of Andrew. Andrew's mother, Thelma Williamson. There is nobody else apart from him and his brother who are descendants of Thelma Williamson, and I don't have them on ancestry, so I wasn't able to do anything in the Williamsons. So let's start with Mary Ord Logan. She is obviously Andrew's grandmother, and her father was William Logan, and her mother was Anne Selby Wallace. So if I go on to DNA relatives of Mary Ord Logan, obviously Patricia is a first cousin, and she has the same grandparents, Thomas Marchbanks, Mary Ord Logan. Duncan McNabb, well-known friend of the family, is a second cousin. He is descended from William Logan and Selby Wallace. And then there are all these other people down below who are all DNA matches to Patricia and presumably Andrew if we do it. And there's third, fourth, and one of them is sixth cousin. So if I go one more generation, I go up to Elizabeth Leslie, who's the wife of George Marchbanks. As you can see, her father was James Leslie, her mother was Jane Hunter, and you've got Leslie's, Coburn, Hunter, and Wilson down there. So if I look who is descended from Elizabeth Leslie and George Marchbanks, Jane Clayton, who we know is the second cousin of the chief, and she she's sadly died in Georgia. Cynthia Allen, second cousin. Catherine Pouslin used to be the president of the Clan Marchbank Society, Helen Reid. And this, I know this lady because she actually came and visited Patricia and I, and she was interested about the Marchbanks line. And the others, I really don't know anything about. Third, fifth cousin, one time removed. And then the fourth generation is Mary Cook, the Reverend Thomas Marchbanks, Mary Cook. Mary Cook, her father was the Reverend George Cook, and her mother was Diana Shank. I don't have his DNA, but George Cook was with us at the last AGM last year, and he's descended from the Reverend George Cook and Diana Shank. So all these people are all relatives, and they're all DNA matches. They're getting further and further away, fourth cousin, fifth cousin, sixth cousin. So essentially, that's what I've got as DNA matches. As I say, I haven't put any flesh in these names, but I thought it was interesting at least to investigate the female lines. So that's the end of my presentation on Marchbank's female lines. And so the next item in the agenda is election. Yeah.
So, Stuart, before you get to that, I've finished my little presentation on interesting people in each of those lines. If people wanted to see it now, I'd be happy to show it. But I appreciate we've been at it now for 50 minutes, so people might think that's too late.
Does anybody have any feelings, or would they like to see some of these female lines, stories about them? Or should we leave that for another time?
Sure, if the chair thinks we have time, but I think if you want to keep to the clock, that's okay too.
Something we could put to the end, and then if anyone wanted to hang on, they could.
Okay, that's an idea. Let's do that. Okay, let's move on to item number 11, election of office bearers. Patricia, do you want to do this?
Yes. I would like to nominate Rachel Marjoribanks for the office of president. She's the niece of the chief and the eldest daughter of the clan genealogist John Marjoribanks. She was a major in the British Royal Artillery and served in Afghanistan. And at the moment, she is a project manager at Howden, an engineering company in Scotland. So I think she's an excellent candidate for presidency. I would also like to nominate Lee Plumley for vice president. Lee is a lawyer who practices at Epis and Plumley in Greenville. He's a member of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. His cousin is the clan secretary, Caroline Morris, and his great-great-grandfather was Benjamin Gifford Marjoribanks. Lee's been very helpful indeed to the Clan Marjoribanks Society in the past. So can I ask if there are any other nominations?
I would like to nominate Robin Duffy as membership chairman. She's a descendant also of Benjamin Gifford Marjoribanks, and she's a paralegal by profession and holds several offices with the Greenville Women's Republican Party. She's very well qualified, and she has attended most of our gatherings.
That sounds excellent. Yes. Yeah. Are there any other nominations from the floor? If not, these three are elected non-NEMCOM. So that is Rachel for President, Lee Plumley for Vice President, and Robin Duffy for Membership Secretary US.
Mrs. President, may I ask, outgoing President, may I ask, is it the intention of the Society that the other officers currently serving who've indicated their intention to continue in service, are they also put forward for continued, and would they be acceptable to the meeting?
Absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Unless somebody else is nominated, I guess all these people have accepted to serve for another year. So they're elected NEMCOM too. Excellent. The only other two things on the agenda are discussion, any other business, and next meeting. Maybe we could talk about the next meeting. If we have another one in 6 months, I suggest the 28th of April. And if we have another one in a year, I suggest 13th of October. Anybody have any other suggestions or? Well, let's put that down as a proposal unless anybody has some something else that coincides with that. So, discussion and any other business? Any discussion? Anybody want to bring anything up?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is the notification that I have given for these meetings sufficient, do you think? With notifying the, I believe it was 73 on one list and 121 on another list. Have I given enough notice to be fair to everybody?
Thank you.
I think so.
Yeah, I think that was great. Yes, thank you very much, Caroline.
Doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. That was, I mean, you have dedicated a lot of time and energy to making this happen, so appreciate it very much. I think that's well done.
Thank you.
And I'd like to give this is Kimberly. I'd like to give an update on the U.S. tartan order. I reached out to Jay Wilson, who's the one who placed the order for us, and the order has been placed. And when I reached out to him, he said that it will be 14 weeks for it to be manufactured, woven. And so that will put us of getting the fabric around mid-January 2024. And then he also added that if, there's some items that are going to be tailored. And then for the tailored items, that'll be another several weeks. So that'll probably be the mid-February 2024.
Are you saying that all the items will be shipped together, both the plain fabric and the tailored items?
No, so just the, so from Scotland, just the fabric, and then they will distribute it. Jay will distribute it.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no any other business, should we continue with John's presentation on
Mr.
the?
Chair, there's one thing I'd like to raise briefly.
Yeah.
I'll keep this fairly brief. There's a proposal jointly between the Standing Council of Scottish Chiefs and Scottish Heritage USA to publish a book called the Chief's Book. This would follow on from Highland Clans in 1967 and the Scottish Clan and Family Encyclopedia in 1994. And the intention would be to publish 2,500 books and to launch the book at the Grandfather Mountain Highland Games in 2025. And the book would contain entries for each clan with clan history, heraldry, tartan, chief's arms, anything else the chief wanted to include. And the idea is that each clan would buy a number of books. Now, I think what I shall do is pass the details of this on to Caroline, and they can be circulated so that people can have a look at what the book is about and consider how many we as a clan might consider buying, if we want to buy any. Because obviously, in order to publish 2,500 books, the Standing Council of Scottish Chiefs and Scottish Heritage USA want commitment from a number of chiefs that their clan would buy a number of books. For example, 10 books at £20, £200 worth. So I'm going to suggest that we circulate the details of the book, and people can have a read of this and think, oh, well, that's quite interesting. I might like to have one of those, or one for the family, or one for a present for somebody. And then we can come back and form an idea of how many we might decide to buy for the Marjoribanks clan, or not to buy any. We're requested to make a decision by the beginning of November. So I'll get these circulated quite quickly, and then we can think about it and form an opinion as to whether we're interested in the book, and if so, how many we consider buying. Right, that's it. I'll let you have all the details and you can think about it a bit further. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Well, do you want to carry on, John, with your presentation on Marjoribanks female lines?
I'm happy to do so if people are interested. It's really up to our new chairman to decide whether we, our new president, to decide whether we go ahead or not.
How about we officially draw the meeting to a close, but if anyone who wants to hang on and see the presentation, which I would be interested, then they do.
That sounds good.
So apologies, John, but I am expecting someone at my home in about an hour, and it would be good if I received them not wearing my Caniga sweatshirt. So I'm going to have to leave the office and commute back here. So sorry to miss it, but hopefully our very efficient secretary will keep up with that, and we can get the report. But thank you for doing that. And the only thing, and congratulations, Rachel, on the presidency. The only thing I would ask is that, at least until the meeting is convened next year, that you remain in good health and alive, so that the vice president does not have to assume for which he would be woefully inequipped.
I'll do my best as I learn.
But wonderful to see everybody, and sorry to have to leave, but I hope everyone has a good evening, morning, wherever you are, and we'll look forward to the next gathering. So, thank you.
Good to see you, Lee.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Right, Dad, over to you.
I'm just trying to share the screen. I've pressed the little share screen button, but nothing's happened.
Oh.
Oh, there we go. That's not right. Sorry, I need to. Sorry, I've got to find this thing. Beg your pardon. It's on that little one there.
Right, got that.
All right, see it? Everyone see it? Good.
Yeah. Yep.
Good.
The first family of chief, the wife of the chief that we have a record is the Purvis family, who married the chief before 1537. Since then, we've had the chiefs have married into the Reed family, the Douglas of Longnidry, Stuart of Kilbeg, Sandilands of Torfichen, Seaton of Lathrisk, Hay of Caribba, Chalmers, Laurie, Cook, Leslie, Logan, and Williamson, and finally the Banks family, who used to be Marjoribanks. A long list. What I'm going to concentrate on are, as Stuart identified, the Cooks, the Leslies, and the Logans. Rather than talk about the whole lot, we'll look at what the families that the chief has married into since what I might call the downfall of the Marjoribanks family, which between 1820 and 1860, the barony of Marjoribanks was sold, the barony of Bathgate was sold, the estate of Balbardi was sold, all the old family papers went up in smoke, and the chiefship went to the seventh son of Alexander Marjoribanks of Marjoribanks. But in those three generations, three eminent families married into the Marjoribanks family, and Stuart's shown you some of the DNA connections. Now I want you to give you a little flavor of some of those families. The family of Mary Cook, the wife of the Reverend Thomas Marjoribanks, the seventh son of Marjoribanks of Balbardi, who was the minister of Lochmaben and then Stenton, and de jure our 14th chief. Mary Cook, I haven't managed to find a picture of her. There must be one somewhere, but it hasn't yet come to my notice. But her father, George Cook, came from a prosperous family of merchants, churchmen, academics, and lawyers from Pittenweem in Fife. He followed his father and grandfather into the ministry of the Church of Scotland, becoming moderator of the General Assembly in 1825, professor of moral philosophy at the University of St Andrews from 1829, dean of the most ancient order of the Thistle from 1830, and leader of the moderate party in the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland from 1834. Around about that time in the Church of Scotland, there was a lot of unrest and dispute between the moderate party and the evangelical party. The evangelical party wanted to take a much more evangelical approach to their religion, and they disliked the standard practice of the heritors in the parish, those the landed gentry of the parish, being able to nominate the minister. They wanted power taken away from the landed gentry and put it to the hands of the people. And in the Great Disruption of 1843, 450 ministers of the Evangelical Party, under the leadership of Thomas Chalmers, walked out of the Assembly to form the Free Church of Scotland. Ironically, Chalmers was from Anstruther, just a mile and a half from Pittenweem, where George Cook was from, the leaders of the two parties. Cook never really recovered from the blow. It was a major knockback for him, and he died of a stroke. In fact, he dropped dead in the street a couple of years after that, and ironically, Chalmers died 2 years after that. But the church didn't reunite until 1929. So the Cooks were in the thick of it. Another ancestor of the Cooks, just interesting little story, the 11 greats grandfather of Diana, Shank, who was the mother of Mary Cook, Murdoch Shank, received his estate at Kinghorn in Fife from Robert the Bruce in recognition of his service to the crown. In 1286, when riding from, in fact, from Edinburgh, but he'd landed at Inverkeithing and then going on to his castle at Kinghorn, where his new wife awaited him, King Alexander III, riding in the middle of the night, fell to his death in a storm, and Murdoch Shank found the king's body and looked after it. King Alexander's 3 children had died before their father, so his heir was his granddaughter, Princess Margaret, the daughter of King Eric II of Norway and his late Queen Margaret of Scotland. The young princess, known as the Maid of Norway, was declared Queen of Scotland when only 1 year old. 6 years later, when sailing to Scotland to claim her throne, she died in the Orkney Isles, leaving 13 claimants of the Scottish throne. That followed the turmoil of the attempts by Edward I to annex Scotland, put his own puppet on the throne, and the wars of independence raged on with William Wallace and Robert Bruce, Bruce eventually emerging victorious, and he was then able to reward Murdoch Shank for his service. The Shank family held those lands for nearly 600 years, and it was sold up in 1886 and is now a golf course. Now, if we look at the Leslie family, Elizabeth Leslie was the wife of George Marjoribanks, who was the Minister of Stenton in succession to his father, whom we've looked at, and George was the son of Mary Cook. There's a double connection with the Leslies because George's sister, Mary Marjoribanks, married Elizabeth's brother, Alexander Leslie. The Leslies were a family of engineers, well known in Scotland at the time. The parents of Elizabeth and Alexander Leslie were James Leslie and Jane Hunter. James Leslie was an eminent civil engineer, designed many harbour works in Dundee and Leith, reservoirs around Dundee and Edinburgh, including the Gladhouse Reservoir, which some of you may have swum in, which is shown there. As a young man, he studied at Edinburgh University under his uncle John Leslie, who was professor of mathematics and later natural philosophy, and was knighted for his academic efforts and erudition. But my goodness, what an extraordinary looking man, isn't he? That's John Leslie on the left. I wouldn't like to come across him on a dark night, I don't think. Anyway, eminent professor of mathematics and natural philosophy. James Hunter was the father of Jane Hunter, and he was professor of logic and rhetoric at the University of St Andrews, and the son of John Hunter, who was professor of humanity and latterly principal of the university. And her mother was Jane Wilson, who was the daughter of Charles Wilson, professor of Hebrew and Oriental languages at the university. So they were a very academic family. Whether we can live up to their erudition, I don't know. And finally, a quick look at the Logans. Mary Ord Logan was the wife of the Reverend Dr. Thomas Marjoribanks, who was our 16th chief and the father of William, who reclaimed the chiefship through the Lord Lyon's office. Mary Ord Logan, pretty young girl, as you can see. They were married when they were in their early 30s. And Tom was quite a poet. He produced a book of poetry, which is in a handwritten version is there. And I've recently had that transcripted. I transcripted it and typed it up and had it printed. And anyone who wants a copy of that can let me know. And I think it cost me about 10 quid a copy to get it printed. But this is the poem he wrote to Molly when they had first met. Take, dearest, from a grateful hand this book you once desired to read, writ by a Scot who loves his land in praise of her majestic Tweed. Some page may call to mind the day when first we journeyed side by side, up Annandale pursued our way, and held by Tweed our fairy ride. And so it goes on, but a very endearing poem written to his young fiancée. And the love never died, because years later, when they retired to St Andrews, on his 37th wedding anniversary, he wrote this little poem to his wife. Somewhere by the shores of Fife, a resigned and patient wife shields from harm her husband's life. When he falls, she lifts him up. When he thirsts, she fills his cup, beckons him to dine or sup. Is he cold? She brings a rug. Is he cross? Her tender hug turns to mirth his scowling mug. And so on. It's clear that they were very much an affectionate couple right up until their death at around about the time of their 40th wedding anniversary. But now looking at Molly's family, her parents were William Logan and his wife Anne Selby Burrell Wallace. Again, you can see where Mary Ord Logan got her good looks from. Her mother's a striking woman as well. Looking at the career of the collector of Malabar, William Logan, William was the younger son of a tenant farmer at Ferny Castle in Berwickshire. He was exceptionally bright, was sent to Musselburgh School east of Edinburgh, where in 1856 he won the Moore Medal as dux in the school. At the age of 21, after graduating from the University of Edinburgh, he sat the competitive exam for entry to the Madras Civil Service and was appointed in August 1862. He spent most of his 26-year career in the district of Malabar. Now, this is Malabar, actually published in the 1951 reissue of William Logan's Malabar Manual. And he was responsible for two major works. Malabar lies on the southwest coast of India and was a major center in the spice trade with Arabia and Europe for many years. He produced two major works there. One was the Report of Land Tenure in Malabar, published in 1882. The other was the Official Gazetteer, or Malabar Manual, published in 2 volumes in 1887. The changes in land tenure recommended by Logan in 1882 were finally put into law by the government of Kerala in 1972. You talk about governments taking a long time to act. Well, 90 years is a long time, but the interesting thing is it was the independent government of Kerala, long after independence from Britain, implemented the recommendations of a member of the British Raj. His Gazetteer of Malabar was translated into Malayalam and republished in 1985. This is it. You can see the script, Malayalam. It's nothing like the English language, but they still valued his work enough to translate it into the local language as a valuable historical and reference source. And indeed, the book itself is still in print. It's in 2 volumes, and it's been reissued at least 3 times that I know of. And in 1996, when I was working in India, I was invited to attend a conference held by the University of Calicut in Kerala on William Logan, his relevance to modern Malabar. So unusually for a colonial civil servant, he has stayed as a useful source for the present government of the independent country. These were William Logan's parents, David Logan, typical Berwickshire farmer in his thick tweed suit, and his wife Elizabeth Hastie, and she was the daughter of the Reverend Hastie, whose diary we have a copy of, and she was, through both her mother and her father, a descendant of George Logan of Berncastle, and George was the grandson of Robert, the 7th and last Logan Laird of Wresselry. When George was wooing his wife, Isabella Fowler, it must have been she was the talk of the locality, because there's a poem which was collected by Robert Burns and published in 1796 called Tibby Fowler o' the Glen. There's our money wooing at her. Tibby Fowler o' the Glen, there's our money wooing at her. Wooing at her, pooing at her, courting at her, can I get her? Filthy efforts for a pelf. That's all the lad are wooing her. Her pelf is her tocher or inheritance. And the point of the poem is, in the last 2 verses there, Be a lassie ere sae black, and she had the name of Scylla, set her upon Tingtuk Tap, that's a high mountain in the borders, the wind will blow a man till her. Be a lassie ere sae fair, and she want the penny siller, a limey filler in the air before a man be even till her. So the poem was saying, nobody wants an impoverished woman. They're all looking for a rich bride. On the 5th of August, 1600, going back to Berncastle's grandfather, King James of Scotland went or was lured to Gowrie House in Perth for a meeting with Alexander Ruthven and his elder brother. In an alleged attempt to kidnap the king, both Ruthven brothers were killed. Meanwhile, Robert Logan of Esselrig was still in favour with the king, enjoying his power and position near the English border at Fast Castle on the Berwickshire coast. In 1603, James acceded to the throne of England. In 1606, Robert Logan died. In 1608, a notary public in the little town of Eyemouth, near Fast Castle, was arrested on suspicion of complicity in the Earl of Gowrie's plot to kidnap the king. Under torture, he said he was in possession of letters between Robert Logan and Lord Gowrie offering Fast Castle as a place to bring the kidnapped king. Sprott was executed, and the king ordered Logan's body to be exhumed and brought before Parliament to be charged with treason. Logan's bones were duly found guilty, and all his estates forfeited to the crown. In the 20th century, the letters were re-examined and found to be forgeries. Was he guilty or was he not? The argument still rages. For King James, the outcome was the elimination of 2 troublesome courtiers and debts worth millions in today's money, and the acquisition of vast estates from the Logans with which to reward his cronies. So, just a few stories about the Cooks, the Logans, and the Leslies. We can cover the other ones at another day if you're interested. Okay, thank you. Bye. I mean, that's the end.
Oh. Thanks very much, Dad. That was interesting. Who knew we had so many academics in Central Criminal? Right, thanks very much, everyone. Good to see you all, and we'll see you on the 28th of April.
Thank you, Madam President.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Cheers, Johnny. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Cheers then. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Lovely.
Bye, thanks.
Thanks.